And I think that exercise is a really good example of how our operations, activities and investments have evolved very rapidly over time. That exercise not too long ago was a bilateral activity between the US and the Philippines, and it's now a multilateral activity. And I see that right across the region with our OAI we're conducting, where we've increased the scope, scale, complexity, and we're not just simply rinsing and repeating, but we're turning the dial to ensure that we're doing more advanced collective training every time we meet. From my point of view, I see each of these OAI as an opportunity for us to collectively set the theatre. And we heard from General Val yesterday about each of these activities not being an exercise but a rehearsal. And that's exactly how I see it. Each OAI is an opportunity for us to rehearse together. Rehearse our war plans, rehearse force projection and sustainment, and rehearse C2. Each of these activities is an opportunity for us to test our readiness. Our strategic warning time has gone. And Chuck talked about that fight tonight mindset that they have in Korea, and that is what we need. 2027 is a line in the sand, but I'd argue that nobody knows that that's the timeline. So we need to be ready tonight, and every time we conduct these OAI, we are increasing our interoperability and our trust amongst teammates. The third thing with OAI is they provide an opportunity for us to conduct reconnaissance, to reconnoitre the physical terrain in the areas where we will be most likely required to fight in the future. They are an opportunity for us to build relationships, both with the human terrain in the areas where we will likely be required to fight, but to build relationships with our flanking formations. And finally, they're an opportunity for us to demonstrate will, combined will, to maintain the status quo in terms of the rules-based order, and also an opportunity for us to demonstrate our combined arms warfighting capability. Thank you.
Thanks, Ash. We're going to come back to this here a little bit, but everybody remembered General Ron Clark's highlighted, and it's a mindset challenge, and Ash, you just reinforced it, and everybody else kind of touched on it as well. We talk about exercises and all the different exercises we have across the Pacific Rim. But as General Clark kind of looks at it, and our panelists have highlighted, and it came up in several of the other discussions yesterday and today, they're not just exercises, but rehearsals. There is a mindset difference as you kind of think through that framework of one versus the other. Great comments, Ash, thanks. Craig, over to you, sir.
Hey, Shaya, thank you so much for having me. AUSA, thank you for the invitation to be here. USAVAC as well. There were couple of generals that made sure I turned up for these for these panel discussions. So thank you to the generals that are sitting out there. I actually feel overawed sitting here and listening to all the generals talk about what they're doing, because a little Papua New Guinea Defence Force, we don't even figure in that space at all. And I feel that my contribution to this panel is all about talking about the issues that we have back home, instead of adding value to your attendance at this important seminar. So I'm the Chief of Force Preparation, not the Chief of Force Development. I think that was written earlier on, and that was my fault. I wasn't quick enough to correct that slight error. Basically, I'm the Land Force Commander and the Maritime Commander and the Air Commander back home. So that's how come I'm going very bold.
You've got a lot of hats.
So the PNGDF is such a small organization that we're still operating. Our structure, headquarters, is still along the. It's still a functional structure, to put it that way. We haven't gone down the tri-service path. Excuse me. We're just too small. And so for me, I've got the PNGDF right now probably around the 3,600, 3,700 personnel, and that's regular. We're not talking about, we don't have territorial or reserve forces, but that's the number of people we have. A total of about 12 units, and 6 of those units, operational units, come under me. 2 infantry battalions, 2 maritime units, 1 air transport wing, and of course the long range reconnaissance unit. So a pretty wide range of responsibilities there, but in essence I'm responsible for the raise, train and sustain of the PNG Defence Force, and I don't do that alone, thank goodness. In terms of raising, I work with Chief of Personnel and Chief of Force Capability Development to help me achieve whatever requirements we need. In terms of training, we have Chief of Training who looks after individual training, and my area of responsibility is collective training, which this panel is all about. And lastly, sustain, and that's not logistics, but I work with Chief of Logistics and Chief of Personnel to ensure that the units are manned, people are posted in, and priority of resources that are allocated, etc., etc. So that's what I do in a nutshell. The priorities that I have, the first one is operational readiness. It's a broad term, of course, but for a simple little force, that is pretty much what I aspire to gain from last year up until this year. And the second priority that I have is joint interoperability. Now, those are good throwaway words that I'm using. Over the last year and this year, the country has gone into a bit of financial challenge at the moment, and trying to achieve that has become a challenge in itself. And there are times when catering for soldiers has fallen away due to funding constraints. There are times when even salaries, you may have heard of a civil disorder that turned Port Moresby upside down early last year, 10th of January, where the city, pretty much half the city went up in smoke. And that was due to public servants not receiving their fortnight pay. So whilst those are priorities that I aspire to and want to work towards, there are some fundamental basic BAU, business as usual stuff that don't get done, that require my attention, just to ensure that our soldiers are fed, they're clothed properly, they're looked after properly so they can do their job. So that's pretty much me having to look after a lot of laundry as opposed to thinking ahead and planning as to what we want to do in terms of war fighting. But we'll get into that later on.
Yeah, no, Craig, thanks. You you highlighted a couple things though to reinforce. You mentioned 3,000 to 4,000, plus or minus, simple, small or little. But from our perspective here in Indo-PACOM in the region, the strategic importance of Papua New Guinea, the location that you have, makes it incredibly important for all of us and the allies and partners as we work shoulder to shoulder going forward. So, Craig, thanks for that. Hey, let me kind of go back, John McFarland, and Matt, you and I kind of talked a little bit before, but one of the things I wanted to throw out to you, directly tied to the topic of this panel, and you've, besides the vignette we highlighted of jumping into Cobra Gold back in almost 30 years ago, getting stuck in the mud, but you've seen these specific pathways and the multilateral exercises over the decades, and these series in joint land power and how they have evolved over the years. But what role in First Corps, America's Corps, as you see, as you look to the future in this campaign series?
Hey, thanks. Just punctuate some panel members' comments here, Ash's specifically, about scope and scale, to give you a sense going from bilateral to multilateral. When I jumped into Thailand in 1996, completely bilateral for us. When I went to Cobra Gold here in 24, over 15 nations participating in a multinational force CPX at the core operational level, exercising large-scale operations with a focus on space and cyber. So specific groups building capacity across all of our partners in those areas, which is of interest to all of our partners. And then also, as I mentioned, tactical to operational, doing the hard things at the operational level. The JLOTs that we just did here in the Philippines, Joint Logistics Over the Shore. In 2022, we did a Army Pre-Positioned Stock Download and RSOI in the Philippines there as we provided the equipment to our brigade from the 25th to execute Balakatan and Salakanib that year. And then also operating not just in day but at night, and then helping partner nations, instead of focused on small tactical level, build the operational level as we're working with the 5th and 7th Philippine Army's 5th and 7th Divisions as they work through how they'll maneuver at scale. So really interesting to see the size and scope. In terms of First Corps' role in this, it is ensuring that for select exercises, we are exercising our warfighting role and rehearsing it forward in the environment. We did this during a warfighter exercise, the Army's premier warfighting exercise for division and corps level headquarters. We did it in Yamoussoukro here in December and brought the Mission Command Training Program from Fort Leavenworth forward to make sure they aren't just looking at U.S. Army things, they're looking at how we interact with our partners and allies. And I've said it earlier this week, I'll say it again, we don't know when we're going to operate or fight next, where we're going to operate or fight next, but we know we're going to operate with our partners and allies, with like-minded nations as we move forward. So being deliberate about that interoperability, how we're building interoperability during these exercises, and at the core level, we provide the bridge to ensure we're building from exercise to exercise instead of recreating exercise to exercise. So as you bring in Compo 2 and 3 units, smaller units that get pumps out in the Pacific once every 3 or 5 years, and even rotating different active duty formations out in the Pacific, we provide the onboarding for the Pacific during our forward operation coordination synchronization effort, as we also learn from our partners and address training objectives from all involved. And on that part, a key aspect is being specific, having specific and measurable training objectives for what you want to do, unilaterally. As you look at, for us, it's deploying from fort to port, deploying equipment forward, and then employing it, and then operating with it wherever we are with it, whatever partner country. But then you have multinational or bilateral training objectives where you're specific and measurable and achievable objectives are identified, and we're candid about where we need to improve, what worked well to ensure we're building that, we're integrating that into future plans. And then the last one is experimentation. As we talked about transformation, what the 25th Infantry Division is doing right now with over 1,900 soldiers in the Philippines as they finish Balakatan, and as a transformation and contact brigade, using this new technology in the environment, in the terrain where you have humidity, you have the extreme terrain, restricted terrain, you have the winds, so a UAV needs to be capable of flying in these different environments, specifically the harsh environments of the Pacific, and providing that bottom-up feedback to those that are providing the equipment, or whoever we're acquiring the equipment from, is incredibly important as we continue to build the equipment stores we need to ensure we're going to dominate. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. You mentioned Compo 2, Compo 3 capabilities, and I know we have in the United States military some of our Army National Guard and Reserve teammates here in the audience as part of this conference, and as you know, they bring some unique capabilities, quite honestly, that are only available in the Guard and Reserve, from which all of us have to have trained, ready to deploy to make sure that we're successful at the tip of the spear. No, I appreciate it. Jan, quick question for you, and you kind of highlighted right up front, and Jan and I were talking about this earlier, so New Caledonia and the French armed forces there, but how does France, we kind of habitually think as a European nation implement, but how do you implement your military strategy shoulder to shoulder in support of Pacific security when everybody kind of the mindset is hey, you belong to EUCOM and NATO and partnership, et cetera, in the EUCOM AOR, but Pacific security. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you for this question. For sure, we are a European country and we take our part on the security of the European continent with strong initiative. We're working with the UK, for example, for an initiative for stabilization in Ukraine after a ceasefire that we expect. But we also have responsibility in the Pacific. We have three collectivities in the Pacific: New Caledonia in the west part, Wallis and Futuna in the middle of the south, and French Polynesia, with 3,000 troops, which is enough to ensure the sovereignty of this territory, but not enough if we need to be involved in a large operation. And we also have the responsibility of 700,000 French citizens in this area, in the three main territories, but also national on other countries, in Australia, in New Zealand. So it's a responsibility, and we are very involved in this responsibility in the Pacific. We are a middle power, but we take very seriously this international responsibility all over the world, in Europe, in the Pacific also. For example, the President Macron will give in the Shangri-La dialogue keynotes in the coming days to show its involvement in this area, and not only leadership in Europe. It's very important for us. One of the key aspects of the military strategy here in this area, in the South Pacific, where we found the French collectivity, as I said, is the reinforcement of the facilities. By real and very important investment on port, on ammunition storage, on fuel capability, because we know that we cannot do everything alone. We need help here from Europe, but also from our friends, and it's important to work all together. And more than permanent troops, probably the good way to progress is a good knowledge of the environment, of the population, the network of partners, and thanks to this kind of meeting, this kind of organization, because it's create link between the leaders, also between the troops, and the exercise to train all together is also something very important to ensure a deterrence, because it's not easy to face for a competitor a coordination of 20 nations. We used to work all together. We know the same procedure. So all the exercises are very interesting on that. The HADR exercise, the most high intensity exercise like the Alice Saber, for example, because we learn many things on us and on the way to progress all together. And something very important for us, and that we have an example day to day, is everything is interconnected. What's happening in Europe is connected to the Pacific. For example, we know that we have North Korean soldiers fighting with Russia in Ukraine. So it's a connection. Another connection is what's happened in the Red Sea. The UT fighting between the civilian boats increased the price of the goods coming in the Pacific. So everything is interconnected. So our responsibility in Europe are also linked to the responsibility in the Pacific and vice versa.
Yeah, Jan, thanks. So how many people here have heard the term of not only New Caledonia, but what Jan highlighted of France being the other Pacific power? You know, quite honestly, of what we're all about in land forces across the Pacific Rim. You know, Jan, thanks. Great. Chuck, you kind of highlighted right up front in your opening remarks and my intro for you, you command a very unique division.
Yes, sir.
Combined with our Republic of Korea, the ROK Army teammates and counterparts. But talk a little bit, tell us a little bit more about that combined nature and the multilateral training and the direction that you're executing, and how that provides us from a broader regional security perspective across the region. Chuck?
Hey, sir, thanks. I see Jeff there. Don't hold this against us, as the division. I always used to pack, hey, they got people, we're good. But this combined division, we are really in the bucket of halves. We get the Republic of Korea's best soldiers. So, the 15,000 soldiers, 11,000 are U.S., but we have a 16th Mech Brigade that is assigned to the division. And every Stryker company commander that comes to the pen trains with them and rehearses with them probably 9 months, the whole time they're there. And that is it's a great thing to have. And it forces, beyond interoperability, interdependencies on a daily basis. We have to work mission command. We have to work, does a theater set correctly? Do we have ammo in the right place? It really forces and pulls all the strings of not just getting to the fight, but actually deploying effectively. In our staffs, our ROK staffs, probably 250 of the best officers in their army come and work on the ROK staff, so we're a combined staff. And those officers are SAMS graduates. Our C5 is a ROK lieutenant colonel, commanded an infantry battalion with the SAMS. He now runs our C5 with our C5, who's a major, his SAMS utilization. So he's getting mentored before he goes back to Bliss to do his KD time. This young major is working with a ROK
And
lieutenant
remind
colonel.
everybody, SAMS.
The School of Advanced Military Studies, our Army's Jedi Knight program that teaches our strategic planning.
I see some of you in the back have your acronym bingo cards
Yeah,
out,
thank you.
so we'll try to clean that up for you. Go
Yeah. But I think those are unique things that I've never experienced as a commander all the way up till I got to the division. The uniqueness of that, and then I think the biggest superpower is the 1,500 Katusas that are in the 8th Army and 2ID. They come from a pool of about 15,000 soldiers competing, and then you go to the peninsula, and all the past Katusas are running. They're CEOs of companies, so they're the best and brightest young soldiers. They're integrated at the team leader level. So we are combined from the team leader all the way up to the division. We have a DCGR, who is a ROK brigadier general, a sustainer, who is really helping us, not just set the theater, but refine the theater. And then, we've got 8th Army here with us. We're also working in 19th DSE to develop a combined logistics command. And I think we're combined at every level and every staff. But that is, I think, one of the things that's unique about the division. I think the other piece of this is, I kind of call it my 3 persistencies. We train in a persistent training environment. It's also a persistent operating environment. And I think where there's some food on the table, it's a persistent experimentation environment. And I think that's where we probably haven't leveraged, and we have an opportunity, because we're competing and rehearsing every day with an enemy 15 kilometers from us. Just this last Freedom Shield, the Stryker Brigade that was participating in a wet gap crossing with the division leading it, with ROK bridging on the LtGen River, 5 kilometers from North Korea. Whilst doing that, they're supporting 17th ID in a division air assault as we're training our 2 cab commander and the Stryker Brigade working to train and build capacity with an infantry division, whilst our Seaburn Battalion helping build CWMD capacity at the same time with that division as we try to expand some of our core competencies to our ROK partners. That's just one exercise in 1 week. From river reconnaissance across the LtGen with an infantry battalion commander to collaborating in a true wet gap. And the interdependency is our bridges only go half the way. So the ROK bridges have to reseed that. And then this summer, you think about the multi-compo aspects. The 412th out of California will come out and do bridging with us. So we're kind of, I say we're a cheap date. The material is there, the end items are there, we need the people, bring them in, and there's a lot of opportunities to continue to build capacity, to strengthen our alliance, and really to fight and get after training and building the science of figuring out where the gaps are, but where we can continue to sustain and deter.
Yeah, no, Chuck, thanks. You mentioned about the interoperability of forces to ensure that as we continue to train together, fight together, and working through those nuances and differences, besides the training, the equipment, the kit, the language, the culture, and all those things, but that continual response and review as we look to the joint interoperability of land power in the Pacific, real important. Thanks for highlighting that. Ash, over to you. We talked a little bit yesterday in the logistics panel with some of our senior leaders. We talked about the tyranny of distance, this contested logistics and sustainment, and that's difficult, certainly across the continent of Australia, much less the entire Pacific region, all of our allies and partners. Highlight, how do you work through those difficulties there across Australia, and any key insights and lessons learned you might be able to share? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, sir. It's a great question, and it's something that I think a lot about. I command an expeditionary division, which by definition means I project force and then have to sustain that force away from home. It's hard enough at times operating within Australia. It's a very large country, so if I paint a picture from point to point, from west coast to east coast, is 2,500 miles. From north to south is 2,300 miles. So it's challenging enough moving forces, regrouping, sustaining and C2ing the division within Australia. Operating offshore, if we think about the Indo-Pacific region, extended sea lines of communications, you have extreme climatic conditions, and you have complex geography. And the geography does not change. As we think about the Second World War, every metric ton of combat supplies that was moved into the Philippines or into Okinawa had to travel in the hold of a large, vulnerable, slow transport ship that traversed oceanic distances. That requirement has not changed. But our lines of communications are now even more vulnerable as our adversary has advanced long-range fires, undersea and space-based systems. So that's the challenge that we have to work with. In Australia, I have very clear strategic guidance. I have been directed to optimise for littoral operations by air, land and sea. So as part of that, we are procuring a littoral watercraft system that includes 8 heavy landing craft. So visualise a ship that's 100 metres long and has a capacity of around 3,000 to 5,000 tonnes, and then 18 medium landing craft which are about 50 metres long and have a capacity of 500 tonnes. So that is going to help me a lot to project and sustain the force. We heard yesterday about the benefits of pre-positioning combat supplies, and I spoke in my opening remarks about the requirement to set the theatre now. We will transition from competition to crisis and conflict very rapidly. So what we have forward deployed is what we have forward deployed. So we need to work as partners to achieve that effect. We need to think about air cargo delivery and work with our air forces to make sure that they're on board with that, noting the threat that exists with surface-to-air missile systems. I visited the 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment on Monday, and I saw a great tactical UAS that can carry a logistic payload of around 160 pounds. That's fantastic, but we need to be able to do that at scale. The other thing, and perhaps I'll end with this, is we do not yet have a common operating picture. So C4I is an issue that General McFarlane and I spend a lot of time talking about. So we need to address that. It's not a technical issue, it's a policy issue that we need to sort out, and we need to sort it out rapidly, because without a common operating picture, we don't have a common intelligence picture, and we don't have a common logistic picture.
Yeah, Ash, although everybody in here we have the military aperture as we kind of look to the long-term landscape, but you just touched on an issue about the common operating picture that sometimes, unfortunately, we need to tee that up as a senior leadership, because it's a policy challenge as we kind of work through that. But yeah, critical node that we've got to work together on as we look to the long term, for not only for regional security, but the readiness across the theater. No, Ash, thanks. Craig, I'm getting all kinds of questions from the audience, and they're all directed to you. So you obviously made a difference already. Craig, I want to highlight the Papua New Guinea Defense Forces, but how do you apply the joint land power in a multilateral exercise or / rehearsal for regional security? And then part of that, if you could, can you touch a little bit on the Olgeta series and that exercise series, the nations that are involved with that, or the elements that are involved with that, but then highlight to the audience, what is it? Just so make sure that the audience understands a little bit about something that may not be familiar with. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, sir. So your first question in regards to joint land power in terms of multilateral exercises in support of regional security. To cut a long story short, we don't do that. We actually haven't practiced that. Papua New Guinea is a developing country, and I think for some of you who've been there, you could argue that it's actually underdeveloped and it's struggling to become a developing country. So the focus of the government is actually internal, on domestic affairs. So you have, the focus is on health, education, infrastructure, and of course law and order, which is becoming a bit of a issue in Papua New Guinea. So the PNG Defence Force is one of the least resourced government agency in the country, and we are under budgeted year in, year out.
We all struggle with that resource fight.
Yes, of course. The PNGDF, we always manage to operate and function with what we have, and have become somewhat resilient in that way, to make do with what we have. But we really survived because we got our closest friend and security partner that props us up all the time. And that is, of course, the Australian Army, who's been doing that for quite a long time now. And also by extension, we get a lot of support from USAPAC. We get support from the UK, from New Zealand, UK Army, New Zealand Army, as well as from FONC as well. So that's what actually helps us to achieve the many demands and the requirements that the government throws at us. So in that, let's say, given the situation that we're in, we've been concentrating on bilateral exercises, concentrating on that and building on that, with the intent to perhaps be able to elevate up to planning, conducting, actually hosting multilateral exercise. But in the time being, we're focusing on bilateral exercises to get there. And I just want to give two examples of two activities. One with USAPAC, exercise Tamyok Strike, which is closed 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
Major General Okumara was there, and he closed that. So that exercise in 21, when it first started in 2021, that just involved 2 infantry battalions, our 2 infantry battalions, a company from each. But last couple of weeks when we closed it, we had 6 units of the PNGDF involved in that exercise. And no longer was it looking at just your basic infantry type training. There was engineer aspects to it, there was medical, there was military police, and staff planning, doing deliberate planning for whether that was HADR or planning for an event that...
All with different capabilities, yeah.
That's right, sir. So that's exercise Tamyok Strike, and we in our partnership with USAPAC. For the Australian Army, in particular 3 Brigade, which of course belongs to the General sitting beside me here. Two exercises that we conduct with them. One is exercise Wantok Warrior and exercise Pokpok. I just want to talk about exercise Pokpok, which is focused on engineering engagement. It's an engineering engagement on engineering activities. Last year, when we closed exercise Pokpok 2024, I think if I remember correctly, the first exercise Pokpok was in 2022 or 23. That was the first one. I could be wrong. But last year, when we ended up closing that exercise, not as in closing it, finishing it off totally, but that exercise, just closing that exercise, we had elements of UK Army engineers and the New Zealand Army also participate in that exercise. So from bilateral, we've now invited people to come as whether observers or participants, and so that's kind of like what we're looking at, being able to conduct bilateral exercises where we can share the costs of that activity, and of course we helped in the process, and then in future, who knows where that activity, where that exercise goes. Talking about multilateral exercises, we have not done enough, hence my earlier statement regarding we actually haven't done that.
Yet?
No, not yet, but we did do one just last week. We finished off with exercise Quad d'Issou, and we did send a small contingent across to exercise Quad d'Issou to participate, and they're back now. And in July, as General Collinberg mentioned, exercise Talisman Sabre will also be participating. That'll be our second time to participate in that exercise. But I think the more exciting bit to that exercise is that there's a component of that exercise that will be exported out to PNG and be conducted up north in PNG. I hope you weren't going to talk about that because I just brought it up. But
no, you made a perfect segue of Quad d'Issou, and Jan, I want to go back to you because I promised you that I would when you mentioned this a little earlier. And you just finished the exercise, and you just highlighted Craig just a short 2 weeks or so ago, with I think you said 22 nations and nation states participating.
Yep.
But how does that exercise contribute to regional security across the Pacific Rim? If you could give us a few notes on that.
Yeah, in pure, when you deploy NGOs, when you deploy food supply, when you deploy emergency vehicle, you need the same logistic as if you want to deploy ammunitions, fuel, and armor vehicle. And when you deploy a paratroops to seize an airport because of a cyclone destroyed the infrastructures, it's also a paratroops company in this airport to seize this airport. And the message we send is the same. The opposition is not exactly the same, for sure. The danger is not immediately the same, but when you have to prepare this kind of operation, the planification, the command post are the same procedure, and the necessity to coordinate with other nations are exactly the same. And I think the message for the competitors is very clear. If you have the capability to gather 1,000 of troops
in a city or around a city in a field training, to send them at 2,000 kilometers in 1 week, the message is understood by the competitors. And to be more far than this exercise, to extend this, because in the South Pacific we are not very good in basketball. I will say a few words about rugby. In rugby, you need very different competencies. The first row is the big men, very strong, but they don't run very quickly. And the second row is the tallest. And the fullback is not the strongest, but have to be positioned on a good way. And it can come from very far, possibly from Europe, but it's necessary. The most important thing is it just arrive at the good time. So, and when you play, when you trade rugby, it's not necessary immediately to have an opposition. You need to have drill, because when you give the ball, you give the ball beyond you. So you need to be very confident on your partner. And that's why it's important to train all together, to be better, even if there is no immediate opposition. We know to be confident on the guy who will arrive just behind you.
Yeah, you know, Jan, you were obviously listening to Lieutenant General Galito from the Philippines when he used the basketball analogy a little bit ago. But no, you're exactly right. It's how we, again, shoulder to shoulder, how do we effectively maximize strengths of our allies and partners to overcome potential areas that they may not have the necessary requirements that they need. Absolutely right. And we're getting a lot of questions in from the audience. And Matt, I'm going to start with you on this one, and it has to do with multi-domain operations, et cetera. And all of you have some insights and perspectives on this. But when you combine MDO, multi-domain or all-domain effects, into our exercises across the region, what challenges does that bring, or perhaps what opportunities does that provide us as we look to the future? Matt, if you could start off, and then panelists, you can kind of jump in there. Matt, over to you, sir.
Well, first, as we incorporate all the different tools we have to drive our all-domain operations, one, it's an opportunity because we do it forward as part of these exercises and ensure we can execute what we're trying to execute in the difficult environment right there, and with partners that do have that capability. Some of it is partners have that capability, some just are trying to learn about it. So it's an opportunity to share with them what we can, depending on the all-domain effect we're doing, to drive it. The challenges would be, as you've heard today, some of the gaps that we have with policy. Some of it is technology in terms of the ability for us to connect like we want to connect with some of these unique emerging technologies that we have. But getting a rep or set in forward helps us work through that. And sometimes we're able to drive down classification for whatever the tool we're using to help us see ourselves and see the enemy, where we can share it with partners. We're doing that with the Philippines right now. And then there's other times where we can't. We got to think through whatever the process or procedure is to bridge those gaps that exist on the connectivity.
Yeah. Chuck, you want to jump in a little bit on that? And even include not only MDO, but one of the questions from the audience also kind of highlighted about information operations domain and kind of how we synchronize that. And Matt, you kind of highlighted, and Ash, you kind of zeroed in on the common operating picture, and some policy challenges and so forth. But yeah, Chuck, over to you.
Hey, sir, the big thing I've learned this past year, I think, is the SOF, space, EW triad.
Yeah.
And we just can't forget, it's not just our great American teams and those theater socks, but it's also our partners. And we have an incredible ROC partners, and I know we have a great commander out in Korea integrating that. But I think that, and then pushing the envelope on MDO and on space decision-making down to the tactical commander level, not really at the division, but I think 8th Army, USFK commander, having the ability to make those decisions in a timely manner. I think the quicker we continue to proliferate, get confidence in this with our senior civilian leaders, I think the speed at our decision-making will really help us take advantage of the great capabilities we have.
Yeah, no, thanks. Ash, any thoughts on that, a multi-domain and kind of working through that?
Yeah, so the Australian Army has just stood up a fires brigade. We've taken delivery of our first HIMARS launchers, and that brigade is somewhere between a multi-domain task force and a Marine Littoral Regiment. Yeah. So it's a really capable formation. We will fire HIMARS Prism munition for the first time on Talisman Sabre this year using Australian capability, which is very exciting. But what's most exciting for me is that for the first time, Army will be able to contribute to sea denial from the land by occupying archipelagic strong points, covering maritime choke points. So there's a significant value proposition right there. But when I think about working with partners, we can achieve a partnered maritime defence in-depth effect, but only if we can talk to each other, if we have shared maritime domain awareness. I've got a great strike capability, but I can strike further than I can sense using organic assets.
We talked about
so
that
I'm
yesterday.
reliant on the combined force to assist with that.
Yeah, no, Ash, thanks. Okay, lightning round, so 30 seconds each. So panelists, so looking out at the audience here. So you've got across the framework, the defense industrial base. So what's one area that from our defense industrial base partners that you think they might be able to help you as you look to the long-term future? Matt, we'll start with you.
I just
30 seconds.
Yeah, I got it, sir. Simple in terms of easy to use for the user, no matter how complex the technology is. Simple to sustain. It doesn't require a lot of second, third order things to happen to sustain it. And then scalable quickly. So cheap and scalable quickly. With this unique technology we have out there, though, they drive high price points. It's not what we're looking for right now based on what we're seeing with the character war evolving.
Yeah, Matt, thank you, sir. Jan, over to you, sir.
Yes, in short, it's very important for you to maintain high-level technology, high-level on information system, drone, space, every that, but you know that. Most important, I think, for the high-intensity conflict, it's the mass. And you have to prepare to produce not the double, but 10 or 20 times more than today. And to be ready now. And to think how to change a car factory in an armor vehicle factory, a toy factory in a drone factory very soon, immediately.
No, thanks, John. General Lombardo, sir.
Sir, we need help, I think, from y'all just continue to improve our sensor-to-shooter network. And then it's really our network. We're co-located. We've been together for 75 years. We're in great facilities, but we got to have a COP that works, not just the U.S. talking to each other or a joint force, but to our partners. And getting that beyond Five Eyes, with the alliance that's in the Pacific, we've got to work that. If we can help with a non-proprietary MOSA and don't be afraid to fail fast and learn and innovate, we just got to keep working through that.
Thanks, John. Ash, over to you, sir.
The land power network is everyone here. So industry is a key enabler. I want to thank industry for being here and for also putting on the expo next door. Sensational. In most of our armies, we're conducting mobilisation contingency planning. Industry needs to be a key part of that. How do we mass produce material? We talk a lot about magazine depth, guided weapons, explosive ordnance. We need to be able to produce capability at scale.
Thanks. Craig,
Right.
30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. So for PNGDF, we're looking at acquiring small arms, and ammunition that goes along with it, and basic field kit. So we're working with Indo-PACOM for that through the U.S. Embassy in Port Moresby. So that's kind of like what we're looking at this point in time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, a couple closing remarks. You know, shoulder to shoulder, joint land power, together as partners, that's what strengthens our regional security. I want to close out this incredible panel of distinguished commanders, leaders, seasoned warfighters. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for an AUSA. Congratulations.